Welcome back to Kuma English Listening Hub. Today, we are going behind the scenes of a place many people love, but rarely think about in detail, the queue at a theme park. Yes, the line you stand in before you get on a roller coaster or a water ride. At first, this might sound boring. After all, who wants to talk about waiting in line? But for theme park designers, queues are one of the most complex and creative parts of the entire park. In fact, a well-designed queue can turn 30 minutes of waiting into part of the adventure. A badly designed queue, on the other hand, can completely ruin your day. In this episode, you will learn how theme parks use psychology, storytelling, technology, and even architecture to design lines that people actually enjoy. You will also learn some advanced vocabulary related to design, customer experience, and tourism. So, imagine you have just entered a famous theme park. You walk past the entrance, hear the music, and see a huge roller coaster in the distance. You feel excited, maybe a little nervous, and you head straight for the ride. Now, your experience of that ride does not really start when you sit down in the seat. It actually begins the moment you join the line. Theme park designers know this very well. They treat the queue as the first chapter of the story. Let's start with the most basic question. Why do we tolerate standing in line at a theme park at all? In everyday life, waiting in line at the bank or at the supermarket is irritating. But in a theme park, people accept it and sometimes even expect it. One obvious reason is anticipation. When you are waiting in line for a big ride, you are not just standing there doing nothing. You are looking at the track, listening to the screams, and imagining how it will feel. That sense of anticipation makes the wait feel meaningful. Designers deliberately feed that anticipation. They position parts of the ride, like steep drops or loops, so you can see them and hear them from the queue. Every time a train rushes past, people in the line move a little closer, crane their necks, or take out their phones to record it. The simple fact that you are getting closer to this dramatic experience makes the wait more bearable. However, anticipation alone is not enough. If you simply stand in a long, exposed line under the hot sun, you will soon become tired, thirsty, and angry. So theme parks work very hard to manage the emotional journey of the queue. One classic strategy is to break the line into segments. Instead of a single, long corridor, the queue turns several corners and passes through different spaces. In each section, something changes. The music, the lighting, the decoration, or the view. This segmentation has a powerful effect on perception. Psychologists have shown that people do not judge waiting time in a completely rational way. We rely on mental shortcuts. For example, we remember the peak moment, the most intense part of the experience, and the ending more clearly than the middle. We also underestimate time when we are busy or distracted. So, theme parks create small milestones inside the queue. You turn a corner and suddenly enter a new room. You step up a short ramp. You pass through a gate or under an arch. Each change sends a subtle message to your brain. You are making progress. Another key design choice is the layout of the line. There are several common layouts. The traditional zigzag or switchback, where you walk back and forth in parallel lanes. The single, clearly defined line that feeds into multiple boarding points, and the so-called virtual queue, where you reserve a place in line using an app. The switchback layout is not very exciting to look at, but it is practical. It allows a lot of people to fit into a relatively small space. However, if nothing happens inside that space, it can feel like a human parking lot. To avoid that feeling, designers add visual layers. They might place interesting objects, like props related to the ride's theme, between the lanes. They might decorate the walls with artwork, maps, or funny signs. Sometimes they add interactive elements, such as buttons to press, puzzles to solve, or screens with mini-games. The single-line system is another important idea. In some cultures, people feel frustrated if they choose a line that moves more slowly than the line next to them. A single queue that serves all the seats is perceived as fair, even if it is longer. This is why you often see a single, snaking line at airport security or at certain popular attractions. Theme parks have borrowed this concept to reduce conflict and complaints. People generally prefer a fair wait over a slightly shorter but unfair one. Now, let's talk about the story. Modern theme parks do not just offer rides, they offer narratives. The queue is one of the best opportunities to tell that story. Imagine a ride based on an ancient temple. As you enter the queue, the ground beneath your feet changes from smooth pavement to stone. The walls are decorated with carvings and mysterious symbols. Torches flicker on the walls, and you hear distant drums. The music gets louder as you go deeper. You pass statues covered in moss, broken columns, and perhaps a display that introduces the characters of the story. Maybe you read a short legend that explains why the temple is cursed, or why you are going inside. All of this happens before you even see the ride vehicle. By the time you reach the boarding area, you are already emotionally invested in the story. The queue has gradually transported you from the real world to the fictional world of the ride. This process is sometimes called immersion. The more senses the designers can engage, the stronger the immersion. They play with sound, light, texture, and temperature. In a jungle-themed queue, the air might feel more humid. In an Arctic-themed queue, the air conditioning might be stronger and the colors colder. Even smell is used. Some parks pump specific scents into the air. For example, a pirate ride might have a faint smell of the sea. A bakery-themed queue might smell like fresh bread. These subtle details make the environment feel real, even if you know logically that it is artificial. Technology also plays a growing role in queue design. In the past, the only entertainment in line was maybe a few posters or a TV screen. Today, many parks integrate digital experiences. You might scan a code with your phone and unlock an interactive game that follows you throughout the queue. You might trigger special effects simply by moving your hands near a sensor. Some queues include animatronics, which are moving robotic figures that react to the crowd. These technological elements have two purposes. First, they keep you occupied, so the wait feels shorter. Second, they deepen the story. Instead of just looking at a scene, you become part of it. Maybe you help solve a mystery, repair a spaceship, or answer questions from a talking character on a screen. From a language perspective, this is a good example of the phrase to blur the line. Technology blurs the line between waiting and playing, between reality and imagination. Of course, technology can also help manage the practical side of queues. Real-time information is extremely useful. Some parks show estimated wait times on screens at the entrance of each ride and on mobile apps. When guests can see how long a line is before they join it, they feel more in control. This transparency reduces frustration. Some parks have introduced virtual queuing systems. Instead of physically standing in line for an hour, you reserve a time slot through an app or a ticket. Then you are free to walk around, eat, or go on another ride while you wait. When your time comes, you join a much shorter physical queue. This changes the role of the queue completely. Instead of being a place where you lose time, it becomes a place you visit briefly at the last moment just before the ride. However, this also creates a challenge for storytelling. If guests skip the majority of the physical queue, where does the story begin? Designers now have to shift more of the narrative to the app, the pre-show area, or the ride itself. Speaking of pre-shows, this is another tool that parks use to transform waiting into part of the show. A pre-show is a short performance or video that you watch in a room just before boarding the ride. It often explains the mission, sets up the conflict, or introduces important characters. In practical terms, it also allows the park to group guests efficiently. For example, you might enter a room with 50 other people. A character appears on a screen and tells you that you are about to travel through time, explore space, or assist in an experiment. When the video ends, doors open, and you move forward to the loading area. From your perspective, you were not really waiting. You were watching a show. But from the park's perspective, this is a clever way to control the flow of people and reduce the feeling of standing still. Now, let's consider comfort. No matter how exciting the story is, if your feet hurt and you are thirsty, you will not enjoy the line. Designers pay attention to shade, seating, airflow, and even acoustics. They try to avoid creating echoing spaces where noise becomes overwhelming. They add fans or misting devices that spray a fine, cool mist of water in hot climates. In colder places, queues may be indoors to protect guests from rain and wind. Height is important too. If guests are stuck in a flat, low-ceilinged corridor for a long time, they may feel trapped. Varying the ceiling height and opening up the space near the end of the queue can create a sense of relief. Accessibility is another crucial aspect. Queues must work for families with strollers, for older visitors, and for people with disabilities. Many parks now provide separate entrance procedures for guests who cannot stand for long periods or who use wheelchairs. This is not just a legal obligation. It is also a question of hospitality and inclusion. If we step back, we can see that the theme park queue is an example of experience design. Every detail, from the direction of the line to the sound of the music, is intentionally planned. The goal is not only to move people from point A to point B, but to shape how they feel along the way. This idea extends beyond theme parks. Airports, museums, and even hospitals have started borrowing techniques from theme park design. For instance, some museums create pre-exhibition spaces that function like queues, with introductory displays that prepare visitors for what they are about to see. Airports sometimes use artwork, plants, and interactive screens to make security lines feel less stressful. In these cases, the principles are the same. Break up the wait, provide useful information, offer distractions, and give people a sense of progress. From a business perspective, a well-designed queue can even increase revenue. If guests are less stressed, they are more likely to stay longer, buy snacks, or purchase souvenirs after they exit the ride. On the other hand, if lines feel chaotic and exhausting, people may leave the park early and complain online. In a world where reviews spread quickly, reputation is extremely valuable. There is also an interesting balance between honesty and illusion. Parks must inform guests about waiting times, but they also try to make those waits feel shorter. They cannot reduce the actual number of minutes, but they can improve the quality of those minutes. As an advanced English learner, you might think of this in terms of subjective time versus objective time. Objectively, you might stand in line for 40 minutes. Subjectively, if you are entertained and engaged, it might feel like 20. If you are bored and uncomfortable, it might feel like an hour. Now, let's review some key vocabulary and expressions from this episode. We talked about anticipation, the feeling of excitement before something happens. We mentioned segmentation, dividing a space or time into smaller, more manageable parts. We used the word immersion, the experience of being deeply involved in an activity or environment so that you almost forget the outside world. We described how technology can blur the line between waiting and playing. And we referred to experience design, the practice of planning not just a product or a service, but the emotions and thoughts that people have while using it. As you listen again, try to notice how these words are used in context. To finish, imagine designing your own cue for a ride. Ask yourself a few questions. What story do you want to tell? How do you want people to feel at the beginning, in the middle, and just before they board? Where can you add small surprises or interactive elements to keep them engaged? How can you make the space comfortable and fair for everyone, including children and people with limited mobility? Thinking in this way is not only useful for theme parks, it is a valuable skill in many careers related to tourism, design, marketing, or architecture. Whenever humans have to wait, there is an opportunity to improve the experience. You have reached the end of this episode from Kuma English Listening Hub. If you want to get the most out of this listening practice, here are a few ideas. First, listen again without reading any transcript and focus on the overall message. Second, write down 5 new words or expressions you learned and make your own sentences with them. Third, try to summarize what you learned about cue design in 1 minute, as if you were explaining it to a friend. Thank you for listening. See you in the next episode, where we will explore another hidden world behind everyday experiences.